The first man to find Australia was neither white nor European, and he knew little of the art of sailing. He was black-skinned, and he probably walked onto the western part of the Great South Island by way of a land bridge from Asia. This man took possession of the world's smallest continent and conquered its huge size. On his journey south, he passed the equator, and somehow he crossed the narrow sea channels that he found in his path. Sometime later, the sea would rise over 500 feet, and the land bridge would dissolve into a string of islands, leaving the black-skinned man in sole possession of a continent 3 million square miles. That possession was to last nearly 40,000 years. The Earth of 40,000 years ago was a hunter's world. Men hunted by day and slept by night. The sole occupation of the human race revolved around the constant search for food. But as the ages of man moved closer to the time of the birth of Christ, the other tribes of the world developed a number of skills that were to release them from the constant hunt for food. European, Asian, and American man were eventually to learn the art of the garden. It was an art that, for the rest of mankind, would lead to the growing of crops, of being able to grow enough during the bountiful season so that the family could eat during the dormant season. And this would lead him to raise herds of animals, which he could use at leisure when his need arose. But the Australian Aboriginal never broke that chain that bound early man to that daily hunt for food and water. He was to come down through the ages still a hunter, the same as he had been when he made that mighty leap across the land bridge and seized this continent.
You white? You got a bottom go kunjina. Menjual wandi banyak ya ngamba. Menjualnya. Wandi because wangalang. Menangalai wale daran ubangan dia.
What did happen to the great Aboriginal heroes down through the ages? I wonder. After all, they must have had them. Heroes that their people were proud of, heroes that they loved. What man invented the boomerang? Who discovered the secrets of the medicinal herbs that cured their illnesses? Who were their great hunters? And where are their wise kings and leaders? These men are now lost, perhaps forever. Except for their stone spear and axe heads, rock and cave paintings, and the remnants of thousands of campfires and feasts, these people left little to help us tell their story. But what did happen to the great Aboriginal heroes down through the ages? They may be locked up in the legends that are recorded in these Aboriginal paintings, but they need the memory of the live storyteller to relate, as these stories were handed down through the generations from father to son, from elder to pupil. Without the storyteller, they are just a picture book without words.
Every rain time, married couple go and paint up that paint. Each owner of that cave, he used to go with his family, his wife, and they paint up that painting and it become real new, ready for other Aborigines to see and young people. Sometimes people go away maybe 1 year, 2 years, never go back to their painting. That painting become dull, and Aborigine we say that spirit really sad because his relatives never come back. His children never come back. Maybe 3 years time we go back, then everyone have to confess to him. They talk to that painting saying, I was away for a long time. Do not get angry with us because we're coming back to you. We are your people.
The Aboriginal lived in an intimate society. The cycle of life in this land of isolation was between person and person, and the center of it all, the campfire. Here was the place to cook and eat the day's catch, to talk, and to perpetuate a lifetime of stories that represented the history of the family, the tribe, the nation. In the day he had the heat of the sun, and at night the warmth of his fire or the shelter of his cave. His home was the land, his ceiling the sky, and his floor the earth. The campsite and fire were as much the living room for his tribe as were the banqueting halls of medieval Europe. He needed no stronghold or castles, for there was no one to attack him. Like the white man who was to come later, the Aboriginal had his legends. Perhaps of the great flood that covered the land and drowned all the wicked people, and of the animals and birds that survived. But his prayers and wonderment were mainly reserved for more earthly beings. His angels and saints were the wondrous acts that long-forgotten ancestors had recorded in the minds of their sons, and which they, in turn, would hand down to their sons.
This freshwater turtle, we call it Woolumara, Aboriginal name. Wooloo is the place where spirit hold, where man was created in earth. Let the sun rise. And let the dew drops. let the snakes get into the holes. Because when sun get up, all animals go inside the hole. Don't walk without warning, without thinking. You must be alert. Listen to the sign of when birds calling out. When there is a funny, noisy sound of a bird, take notice and stop. Stand up and look at the animal, what he's looking at. Because he's saying something there.
Here in this isolation, he would learn the skills to hunt the freakish animals that roamed the land and gather the strange nuts and fruit that covered it. He would find the hidden waters that lay beneath dry, sandy riverbeds. And he would learn to catch the strange insects and birds that shared this place with the kangaroo and the wallaby. Here in the north, somewhere near to the place his ancestors of 40,000 years ago may have first settled, the Aboriginal was master of all he surveyed, and he lived a life of relative peace and prosperity. The history of these early Australians, the Aborigines, is elusive. In the heat and dryness of Australia, most of the records of their past slowly dissolved into dust, eaten away by time. But their culture was unlike that of the early societies of Europe, Africa, and Asia. They had mastered the secrets of the wilderness to survive and live without fear of starvation. They utilized the earth instead of cultivating it. As one area of their land ran out of food, they simply moved on to fields richer and more bountiful, knowing that they could return when the land and wildlife were renewed. Their society was thoroughly organized. Everyone knew what was his, what the rules were, and in the main, they obeyed them.
Every camp, elder used to talk like 6 o'clock in the morning, talking to everybody. And we want to go that area, next day that area, shifting camp to camp. Every area is another man's property because his symbols there, cave painting, everything. We go to that spirit place, that spirit waterhole, or Wanjina cave, or or snake painting or crocodile painting, all different area. Another tribe, all the way like that.
Each of those Aborigines owned pieces of land where they had to look after it, and they had places where they had a lot of honey and edible roots where they could go to. It was within the boundaries of their areas.
It's right marriage and right land, and the symbols, which symbols, they have to understand all those in their relationship.
Our people had to stay within that area. Only they weren't allowed to go anywhere else because there were other tribes owning other pieces of land besides our people. And mostly every other tribe, we almost lived side by side.
This is his mother's land. And this is his mother's, his grandmother, this her land. This one is father's mother, where he married. And this what they know through those paintings. And this one, his wife's mother's mother, is mother-in-law. And this area, these young people have to understand, and they are responsible for these 4 areas. My mother belonged to a Record and Paleshell. She belonged to that.
Malandum. And another name is Prince Regent River. Well, nature has always taken care of the black man in his ways. We just relied on nature to provide for their daily needs. The ground is almost a mother, and off they would go to look for daily food, the roots, edible roots, yams, honey, and marsupials. They would talk about which was the best place to find lots of honey, or what place should they go to look for roots which were plentiful. Or even they would go down to the river. They would talk about these things. With pride, they would talk about their husbands. Sometimes the husbands would go out and he'd say, "Oh, I've saw a lot of yams at a certain place." So when the next day comes, will you all go off there and get all the yams? During the time of hunting, the men would see a lot of the yams and rivers with water lily bulbs, roots. They'd just look and then come to camp and tell where to go.
before they shift to that camp. The spies went out. If any stranger, Aborigines there, they see everything quiet, no kangaroo being hunted. If kangaroo are hunted, he'll dig. His track will tell how he ripped the ground because somebody has disturbed him. But very quiet and everything. Nobody around there, and they come back and tell the elders, no one is there. And that was warning before the ship came. Every morning time, they hit these little babies.
She would tap the child on the forehead and say, always be generous. She would say, lulwa, 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 jabi, 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 which meant always in your lifetime be generous. Anyone asks you for anything, just say okay, because they will do the same for you. When you are hungry, you ask, you'll always get back what you give away. And the same with the ears. She said, do not listen to bad talking or anyone talking about any bad things, such as planning to kill. She said, never listen to that, otherwise you will be involved in it. So now is the time to take these things up so that you won't do them when you grow up. Also with the mouth, she would touch the mouth and say, Wudu, never tell lies. Always tell the truth. Let it cost you what it may. Even the worst thing, if you went and killed someone or saw someone kill someone, you always must tell the truth. Even if it meant that you will have to get hiding or something for it. And Aborigines always carried out those things, even if it meant that something would happen to them. But always it was good for them to have learned what is good, and they just carried out their orders.
The great discoveries that were eventually to release European, Asian and American man from their daily enslavement of the hunt were to elude the Australian Aboriginal. That is, all except one. And it was this, the art of making fire. He found the secret of making fire, and with this skill he was to learn the art of survival, of tracking, of living off nature. spear in hand and fire by his side. From some time in our primitive past, man had used fire to cook, to warm, to heat metals, but here in the ancient continent of Australia, the Aboriginal took a different direction. He adapted fire to help him in his hunt. Indeed, his use of fire changed the landscape of the continent. His constant burning thinned out undergrowth, allowing grassy plains to grow beneath the trees. His constant burning even influenced the type of vegetation that was to survive and flourish. With fire, animals could be smoked out of hiding or could be attracted when the green shoots that followed a fire appeared on the ground. But it was his ingenious method of firing the countryside to help his endless quest for food that made him so unique. Alone, or perhaps with companions, he would study the wind's direction, the terrain, the subtle movements and animal signs, then guide his fire stick to set his prey running towards waiting spears. He controlled his fire stick, burning like some huge chess player, burning a black patch here and a black patch there, but always leaving enough for the next player. With fire, he changed the countryside, but he didn't destroy it. The land adapted to his fire. There was goodness in the food he could find and hunt. The delicacy of the emu or the richness of the kangaroo. With the daily food, the rules were simple. The man hunter had first pick of the choicest parts of his catch, while the woman gatherer chose the best from her hours of work. But above this was the rule that the results of the hunt of the day were shared by all. The success of the individual hunter was the success of the whole tribe. If one found kangaroo while another emu, it was kangaroo and emu on the menu for all. With fire, he also cooked his meats, kept himself warm, signaled his companions, lit the dark night.
We make a fire inside there, and we singe some feather, and some feather they use them for wearing them on the head or for dancing. But we singe rest of the feathers to clean all the feather out. And we put bushes there with a flavor to make that bird that turkey tastes good. It's a flavor bushes we put. And sometimes we put hot stone inside the turkey, maybe 3 or 4 little stones from a river, little round ones. We heat it up and put it, and so it will cook well. And then we cover it up with the other hot sand. And it doesn't cook long, emu and turkey. They're very light animals. And maybe about half an hour we pull them out quick. And that's all, that's an hour they can cook.
The Aboriginal spread himself thinly through the western side of Australia. He had to. The land in the main suffered through lack of rainfall, and this produced a harsh, dry interior with limited vegetation. It could support few grazing animals, which, in turn, could supply regular food for only a small number of his people. He hunted to live and wandered all his lifetime, constantly in search of food.
When wet comes, everybody hears this thunder. Thunder comes, first rain. All the turtle, freshwater turtle, they listen that thunder too. They know that big rain gonna come and big flood. And they make their home, big hole they make inside, and they go right inside so the flood water won't take them away.
Our people always moved around. They never stayed at one place, but where the food had been plentiful, they went off to a certain camp.
We get clay paints, and man paint himself all over his body, right up to his head, his hair must be white everywhere. His spear's all white. Then we can come close to him. The animal think it's a stump or dry stump. We come very close and spear him down. But when we're black, he knows us. But we never have our legs wide open because he got a gap right through. We always have the two legs knit together like one stick standing up, like a stump. And that's how we look like a wood then, dry wood. But if we spread our legs, he knows that human being straight away. It's a lot of ways of tricking animals. Sometimes man too. You can't recognize him. If you're going along, you think it is stump standing up. And he say, hey, hello. Then you get surprised. Yeah.
Here was a land that over a period of thousands of years had been tamed. Not in the European sense of taming, by destroying nature and rebuilding an artificial world, but by living within the bounds of nature and perfecting techniques that allowed the land to provide his needs without destroying its landscape.
Some birds we call wangingi, very small little bird. When they see this kangaroo, he sing out, "Mangara piti 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 piti." That's how she sing out. What she really saying, this is my uncle. And she care for him, bring water to him. When he way out where there's no water, this little bird. And she give him a drink. And that she poured in his forehead and it poured down his nose and he lick it. And that she satisfied because she give him water. She look after him. Other bird like a corrador, we call him. He's a butcher bird. He's a big noisy one too. When he see a man, he hunt him out too, kangaroo. Hijijo, 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 he say. Hijijo means man's name in language is Ija. And hijijo, when he say, man there, this is what he's saying, this butcher bird. And that kangaroo knows straight away. And he get up and get away. And sometime, when man sneaking kangaroo, he have to come on a good wind side so that kangaroo won't smell him. And sometimes men have to be quick because fly go from the man and the fly sit on the kangaroo's nose and he smell that fly, the odor scent from the man, and he take off straight away because he smell. That fly tell him to go away too. And we lose the kangaroo, that man lose the kangaroo. So all these ways have to be very quick and cunning huntings.
There were fish to spear, birds to boomerang, and the delight on a hot day of swimming beneath the waters of a lake to seize the foot of a dozing duck. A wallaby to spear, or a numbat or lizard to catch. And for the women and children, a daily search for berries and nuts, seeds and roots, and always the chance find of the wild honey. In the tall eucalyptus trees lived the parrots, the cockatoo, a little more difficult to fool, but nearly always there.
White cockatoo is balnget with the crest on his head. He's the one more serious bird in the country because he gives more signals, because he got a bigger voice. You can hear him long way. And you get, when he call out really sorrowing one, it make you tremble, because he go ngo, ngo, ngo. When you read that sign, that means it's very lonely, somebody died, and you know. And that's the sign he give us. If he get up roughly, say ngan, 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 that means somebody hand him out. And you, man, sit down quick. When you sit down and you watch, then you see somebody coming. You are the one who give you a sign all the time.
There are no pottery fragments to be found here to help tell the secrets of the ancient Australians. Nor are there stone ruins or houses or temples as with other peoples. This was not the way of the Aboriginal.
The mother would tell stories, of the dream times about the flood owl, where the little children been throwing stones and plucking its feathers off. These sort of stories, the mother would tell them and the children would go off to sleep.
There were times for merriment and great gatherings, for festivities and the getting together of old acquaintances, just as were the holy days of Europe.
Messenger would go and he would take his message stick. So when he went off and came near to the other tribes, they would welcome him. And he would say to the chief of that tribe, "My leader had sent me out here to ask you if my people would come and join yours to show you a corroboree at a certain place." And the other chief would say, "You may go back and tell your leader we would be there at a certain time, maybe 2 moons' time."
But these were the softer moments. At other times, the land would inflict, as it did with other nomadic peoples, customs that to the outsider or the newcomer would appear cruel and savage.
Crocodile? Johnson crocodile. Manogod it called. They're the ones who started this tribal mark. This one in front, because of going through law, and before he become leader, he's prepared. These are crossways. They are the problem that he have to face. And because in his chest here, he don't have that big hollow. He must keep his chest straight all the time. He must be flat all the time. And that's the way that tribal mark was put for reasons, and as a leader.
Occasionally, the tribes would fight over a grievance. But these were never the territorial and empire-building campaigns of Western civilization. More likely, they would involve a kidnapped woman or child or some intertribal problem that would be settled by personal combat. But towering above all seems to be one greatness that was Aboriginal. He had this one asset that has eluded Western civilizations for all their recorded history, and yet the Australian Aboriginal seems to have possessed it for perhaps 40,000 years. And what was this asset? It was freedom. From the fear of being invaded, from the jealous preoccupation of what his neighbors owned, free from the worry of wealth that gold and silver brought to European cultures. He was free from the worry of the predatory animal, for his land was safe. He could sleep out in the open at night by his campfire, for what was there to harm him? The land was his, not to be cut up into little pieces, to be owned by this person or that, to be collected and seized by one person, and then handed on to his eldest son. No, the land was there for his tribe to use. He was a guest on the land, and as a guest, he treated it well. He built no cities and cleared away no forests. He simply lived with the land, and when the food and water it offered gave out, he moved on to another area and gathered his food there. And so the cycle continued.
You know about a little story about the feast they've been having a long time back. All the birds, all sorts of birds. One time there been a big feast, but they was gonna have manjora, you know, little black fruit. Everybody been gather that one, make big heap of them, and crush them up and make every bird been sitting down waiting. They've been waiting for this big feast. One day, these two emu waiting too long. They said, oh, too long, this party gonna start. They get hungry, you know. Another one start, you're right, you wait here, I'll go in. This another emu start run. She run in and she grabbed the manjora, we call it, blackberry. And away she took off. She run, well, you know how fast she can run. She run and run and run and run. They couldn't catch her up. So all sorts of animals chased after him, all sorts of fast birds couldn't get him. Then this one called bronze-wing bird, bronze-wing pigeon now they call him, but we call him wawarek. And this bronze-wing pigeon chased this two emu. That emu traveled more heading for east country, in the open plain. She chased him and chased him and chased him, they turn her back. That wawarek would make turn her back, that bronze-wing pigeon. Brought him right back to where the big party was held in. And that's why now they call that bronze-wing. In our language, we call him wawarek. He brought her back to that party.